just a reminder again, if you have any phones or anything, please silence them, because this is streaming and it picks up every little bit of noise, so appreciate that. So obviously we're here for the worst kind of tragedy we've seen across the country, and we hoped and prayed it would never come to Oakland County, but it has. It's visited itself on our community, and it's certainly the first thoughts are prayers for the families and loved ones and friends that have been impacted by this unspeakable and unforgivable event. I'd like to speak in general about school safety. You know, the one upside is that our community, Oakland County specifically, has prepared, I think, as well as any community in the nation. So the first point I'd like to make is sharing information. If you hear or see something, you've got to say something, whether it's okay to say or whether it's calling us directly or anonymously through a variety of methodologies. We need to know what you see and hear in case there's some credible information there. Just in this past week, we've intervened in 3 different events. They were deemed not to be credible, but we check every one of those out. And so it's critically important people understand that's not a burden to us. It's something we want you to do. Call us if there's anybody talking about things, posting about things, writing, anything. You need to let authorities know so there can be intervention. The first line of prevention is open communication. We're also hearing that there were rumors that somebody had heard or said something or knew something in advance. None of that came to us prior to today. So if we find out there was information, that's exactly the kind of thing we need to get looped into. In fact, we have a specific phone number set up. If you have information about this case, whether it's previous information you're aware of or anything that's important or relevant, please let us know at 248-858-4911. Or you can email us at OCSO, that stands for Oakland County Sheriff's Office, at oakgov.com. And as I said, we also accept confidential or anonymous tips on anything related to schools. Secondly, I think it's important to note as we face these things across the country and now here in Oakland, training. We train regularly for active shooter scenarios, and we have for years. In fact, we created a group called OakTAC many years ago after the active shooter in Mumbai, and all of the police agencies in Oakland County have trained together for just this scenario. And we looped in and have fire departments now that train with us and are partners in that same activity, and all of that was very evident today. So we've seen agencies train in our Brandon Township temporary training facility, and with a new training facility on the horizon, we intend to do even more intensive training and train with every agency in Oakland County going forward as we have in the past, but with more scenarios and more real-world pressures, if you will. Third, after other school shootings around the country, you saw in some scenarios where the officers or deputies didn't go in. They staged or they waited outside. After some of those scenarios were observed, I made it very clear to our staff, if they get there first, their job is to go in and neutralize the threat. If I get there first, I'm going in. If we get there together, we're both going in. There will be no staging. And I'm proud to say that's exactly what happened today. They went in and searched out the threat. They went to the gunshots. Train, train, train is our mantra, and that also includes students, schools, and staff. Oxford has been one of those districts that's been proactive and has been training. We have literally trained hundreds of schools, businesses, as well as houses of worship. It's sad, but it's necessary. If you remember many, many years ago, we used to have students climb under the desk because of the potential threat of a nuclear attack. Well, there's a very different threat than we have to train to it and be prepared to it. And this kind of thing can happen anywhere, and sadly, it happened even in a sweet, quiet community like Oxford. It can visit itself anywhere in America. No one is immune. But that training can, does, and did, I believe, in this situation, save lives. So, specifically to this case, on November 30th, our dispatch center received in excess of 100 phone calls in a very short period of time. Their professionalism in responding to that, handling calls, and getting relevant information to get out to our deputies was a testimony to their excellence and professionalism. The high school has approximately 1,800 students, and cars were dispatched at 12:52 and arrived minutes later. Within 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes of their arrival, they had a suspect in custody. The first deputies on scene were joined by about 100 other deputies from the sheriff's office, and shortly thereafter, almost another 200 from area agencies, including numerous fire departments. I'll give you a very detailed list of who showed up so you can understand the partnership and the training that has gone into being prepared for a situation like today. The deputies removed from the suspect a 9mm Sig Sauer SP 2022 pistol. It was loaded at the time and still contained 7 rounds of ammunition. When they took it from him, he had a loaded firearm and he was coming down the hall. That, again, I believe, interrupted what potentially could have been 7 more victims. Arriving deputies and officers from other jurisdictions searched the school and evacuated injured students and staff, along with others that were uninjured but clearly panicked. Responding deputies reverted to their active shooter training that we talked about already, deploying throughout the building and searching for additional assailants, because obviously at that point we didn't know if it was one or multiple assailants, while rescuing victims with the assistance of our partner fire service agencies. Internal and external command posts were established. Secondary searches were conducted along with securing the inside and outside perimeters. The FBI and MSP bomb squad responded to assist, and they checked a package that my K-9 unit, our explosive unit, had alerted to. More than likely, the suspect had his weapons in that bag. There was nothing else in that bag that was dangerous. Our Office of Special Investigations and our forensic lab is currently processing the scene, which is expected to take many, many hours and go all night long. I'm extremely proud of the deputies, our partners, the fire departments and EMS, for their intervening actions. As I mentioned, I believe they literally saved lives, having taken down the suspect with a loaded firearm still in the building. I also want to underscore the impact on our team and any team that faces something like this, and how proud I am of them and anyone else in these situations. One of our deputies, because of the severity of wounds, loaded up one of the children in his car, and sadly that child died in the car. One of our employees who was in the 911 center as part of the team taking the emergency calls had a relative killed in the attack. And so this touches us all personally and deeply, and will for a long time. This wound will never go away, and we understand that. But we also want the community to know that we're here for them, and we will leave no stone unturned in determining all the things that led up to it and making sure that this investigation is full and complete before it's turned over to hold this individual accountable. As of right now, we have tragically lost 3 students, a 16-year-old male. The names, you'll have the names of the deceased. The families have been notified. He died in the patrol car on the way to the hospital. 14-year-old female and a 17-year-old female. Another 8 people were injured, 7 students and 1 teacher. Victim number 4 is a 15-year-old male. He's in critical condition with a gunshot wound to the head. Victim number 5 is a 14-year-old male with serious condition, jaw and head gunshot wounds. Number 6 is a 17-year-old female. She's stable with a neck gunshot wound. A 15-year-old male, excuse me, stable with a gunshot wound to the leg, the left leg. A 17-year-old male, stable condition with a hip gunshot wound. A 47-year-old teacher who has been thankfully discharged. She had a left shoulder gunshot wound that appears to have been a grazing wound. Tragically, we have a 14-year-old female who is in critical condition with chest and neck gunshot wounds, and she's currently on a ventilator after surgery. So it's looking very tough for this young girl. Our 11th victim, excuse me, is a 17-year-old female. She's in critical condition with a chest gunshot wound as well. There were multiple non-threatening life injuries from students as they were rushing out of the building, obviously evacuating. They got hurt. Most of them were treated and released at a predetermined staging area, and our thanks to Meyer for assisting with that and being involved in reuniting students with their parents. On-scene counseling with our chaplains was made available to the staff, students, and certainly the families. And I have assigned a deputy to each of the victims' families to be with them as long as necessary so that they ensure they get the information they need, the comfort they need, and the protection they deserve. As I mentioned, we have the suspect in custody. He's a 15-year-old male sophomore, a resident of Oxford Village. He was not injured, and he's currently lodged at Children's Village on campus here on homicide and attempt homicide with the approval of the on-duty probate court referee. We cannot identify him at this point because he's a juvenile, and he has not been charged as an adult, so there's no ability to identify him at this point. With his parents present, he declined to speak, and they have hired an attorney, so there is no conversation that's going on and no cooperation at that level. Preliminary investigation revealed that the weapon used in this shooting was purchased on November 26th, 4 days ago, by the boy's father. The gun had 15-round magazines. We found 2 of them. There allegedly was 3 that was purchased, and he had the crime scene unit. Our forensic lab is on scene, obviously processing a huge crime scene. More than likely that 3rd magazine will be found there. At least 12 rounds, we know. That's a preliminary number based on casings observed on the ground and part of the active scene that they're now processing. So there's a lot of stuff that we've seen on social media and different chatter and different rumors. I would just caution people to not spread stuff unless it comes from us, because some of the stuff we've seen has absolutely no connection or relevance to this case, and it's hurtful to the community and the families that see some of that. So let's try to be respectful of that, and we'll release as much information as we can, as soon as we can, that won't jeopardize any potential prosecution. I'm joined by a specialist that was from McLaren, Oakland. She can answer, I'm sorry, I don't know your name? Dr. Gardner. Can answer any questions as it relates to medical issues or conditions. Congresswoman Slotkin and County Executive Coulter have joined us and have been super supportive of our efforts today, and thank you for being here. So with that, I guess I'll throw it open to questions, and I'll answer what I can, but frustrating to you, I'm sure we're not going to completely divulge our case because it's an ongoing case.
Can you tell us anything about what you found at his house?
I don't think they've done an inventory of that. A search warrant was executed at the suspect's home. I know that we have seized a phone, and we're in the process of examining whatever was seized.
Were there any threats made by this young man prior to the incident that led that maybe this would happen?
There was nothing that came to us about prior concerns or threats. And that's part of the investigation, that we have hundreds of people working.
Is
Sure.
this his first year attending Oxford High? Did he go to a different school before? I know kids were out due to COVID last year.
He's a sophomore. I honestly don't have the answer whether he was there as a freshman. We can try to run that down for you.
Did the suspect surrender to officers as they approached him, or how did they apprehend him?
As they were coming down the hall, they saw him, and he put his hands up, and they took a gun and took him into custody.
Did he say anything?
No.
Do you have any indication why the father bought a gun 4 days ago?
As I said, they're not talking to us.
Sheriff, you mentioned a social media post. There appears to be one that we've seen that appears to come from the suspect with a picture of a gun posted. Can you tell us about that at all?
It's my understanding, again, that this was a recent weapon purchase, that he had been shooting with it and had posted pictures of a target and the weapon. That's all part of what's being looked at. We're going to do a deep dive on the social media and all the activities of this young man.
But the gun that you did describe appears to be the same weapon that was.
It does appear to be so, yes.
Did the shooting start in a classroom and spill out into the hallway, or was the student in class, or did he just?
The problem for us is we can't be too specific on that because they're just now getting into processing. So, we'll learn more as they process the scene of where maybe it started. We also have a tremendous amount of video footage that will be in the school. Oxford's very proactive with cameras, so our detectives are going to have to really deep dive all of those video cameras and review exactly what and where and when. The only information I had is that he came out of a bathroom with the weapon, and I don't know where he went first. So,
Hey, Sheriff, just to be clear, on the social media, just once more, some students have said that they had seen some threats on social media, and some had reported those to authorities. Can you say whether that happened or not?
well, I would love them to contact us because we got none of it.
Did the
I can
school-
tell you that nothing came to the sheriff's office and nothing came to our school liaison in the school.
Are you familiar with the school sending out an email assuring parents that there was no threat? We have seen an email like that the school sent out.
We've been kind of busy. I'm not
Is that
aware
the
what.
one on November 11th?
11, yeah.
Yeah, that was related to an incident outstate, out of like.
Oh, that
Kansas
was a
or-
different one we
That was
investigated. That was a completely different. That's where there's a lot of cross pollination for some folks that are occurring on this. They're putting old posts or letters to today's event. There was one with a deer head, had nothing to do with today. There's all sorts of. That's what I'm saying. Please ask us, because a lot of these that turned out to be nothing. It was actually in a different school, had nothing to do with Oxford, and we were able to determine that. And they sent out the letter and said there's no threat.
Did they say that he would be tried as an
Whoop!
adult?
I got too many. Say that.
There's a lot of people who have been telling us this boy, this 15-year-old, was bullied. Is there anything to lead you to believe that he was having trouble at school, any disciplinary action, anything before today?
We don't have anything on that. Again, we have no contact with that young man, have had nothing to suggest there's been disciplinary or problems with him at the school. So that's part of our investigation to determine what happened prior to this event, and if some signs were missed, how were they missed and why.
Sheriff, you mentioned that you have had no contact with this individual. Can you say if any law enforcement, whether it be Oxford Police, have been to the suspect's home?
I'm not aware any law enforcement agency had any contact or any information that he was a concern or a threat. We have not been told that by any agency. Now, social media says different things, but that's part of the investigation.
At this juncture, has the department or any other authorities received any credible tips in terms of motive or possible warning signs?
Nothing at the moment, no. And he hasn't spoken, and obviously that's the best place to get motive. But he is under a lawyer with his parents' refusal to allow him to talk to us.
What about
Will
the
he be tried
victims?
as
Were
an
they
adult?
targeted?
That charging decision, once we, so I'll back up a little bit. Once we complete the totality of our investigation and wrap up every loose end, that will be presented to the prosecutor for charging determination.
Sheriff, what about the victims? Were they targeted? Was it just totally random?
That will be part of the investigation. Again, we don't know where he went first or why. He didn't tell us, and so we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of hours reviewing the videos of the school to look at his movements, to see if there's any pattern to it or if there's any past history to it. That's all stuff we've got to look into.
Are
You
there metal
mentioned he came
detectors
out
in
of
the
a
school?
bathroom.
There are no metal detectors. Sorry?
You mentioned he came out of a bathroom. He came out.
I believe that's, he didn't come out firing. He came out with a handgun.
Was that seen on surveillance video? Or
Yes.
Someone, okay.
Was the suspect trying to get into classrooms where students are barricaded by pretending to be an officer?
We're told that that's the case. We've obviously got literally thousands of interviews to do. They were in lockdown. That goes to the training. The school district had been trained. The students and teachers had been trained. Going in a lockdown and how you go into lockdown is critically important. One of the things that we brought back to our agency after I got a very detailed debrief on Parkland was what you call the safe portion of a classroom when they're in lockdown that can't be seen. And those kinds of things were all stuff that we taught different school districts. They went into lockdown. I know they barricaded doors. In terms of whether he was doing that, that will be part of what we have to
How
investigate.
brave were those students?
Well, I think everybody was brave in this situation, and they reacted with the training and with the wherewithal that I think saved lives. Tragically, we've had lost lives, and we had people very seriously hurt. But again, had there not been intervention by our deputies with 7 rounds in the weapon and the students and teachers locking themselves down and barricading doors, we might be, if it's possible, in a worse situation.
Do we expect an arraignment as early as tomorrow?
It's hard to say. You know, we've got to get enough of the basics done before the prosecutor can make an informed charging decision.
What are the chances the parents could face any charges?
That will all be up to the prosecutor. Ultimately, we're going to present everything, how it played out, and whatever applicable thing I presume they'll charge, we certainly want it charged.
Do you have an anticipated timeline for when the investigation might be complete?
I can't even guess. I don't know what they're going to find in the school. I mean, it's going to take a tremendous amount of work to go through the school evidentiary, our forensic, and our crime lab, and it's going to take hundreds of hours to go through videos. And then we have to individually interview everyone that was in the school. So you can kind of see the Herculean task that is ahead to get it done right.
What is important for the students and the families to do going forward? Because this is traumatic for all of them. What do you want families and students to be focusing on and doing as they're not in school and trying to process what just happened?
Well, first, reach out for support. If you are in that school or you're feeling trauma, or if you're feeling any kind of depression or anxiety, that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's normal. Ask for help. We've got chaplains available. We have access to counseling and psychiatric assistance. That is normal. We encourage people not to be afraid of seeking help. When you're in a traumatic situation, lots of times you need help forward. So we would encourage them to get that, not shy away from it, talk to their kids about it, what they're feeling, get them the help they need, and let them know that it is normal to feel this way, that it is punishing to be in a situation where you have that danger around you. I've been in a lot of terrible situations and seen a lot of deaths, and it never becomes normal. And if you've never been around it, it's even worse. So that would be my first thing to family and friends. Get help. Don't be afraid to ask. Secondly, again, be aware. If you see something, say something. If you're in any other school or this school, that is our best preventive method, is to share information so that we can send somebody out, even if it sounds implausible. I was mentioning a previous case. One of the cases we interrupted was a 6-year-old that had talked about shooting somebody at school, and another 6-year-old heard it and told their parents. The parents didn't dismiss it and told the school. The school didn't dismiss it and called us. We had deputies that stopped that 6-year-old on the way into a school with a gun. Never dismiss it. We are always much more interested in checking anything out than missing one thing like happened
What
today.
school was that at?
It was like 10, 15 years ago. If you remember the case in Flint where the 6-year-old shot and killed someone, it was about a month before that we interrupted one.
How does the level of training that you've done in Oakland County compare to other districts?
I think, I'm very involved on the national level, and I would put Oakland County's cooperative training with police and fire at the top tier of anybody in the country. OCTAC, as I mentioned, was created in response to Mumbai, that we have to better train together so that there's no hiccup and no moment where you have to go, what are you going to do when you go through the door? Okay, I'll go right, you go left. They have to know immediately, hand in glove, we're going in and we're doing this almost dance to immediately go save lives. And we're going to look for that threat, and everything else is secondary. Because every second you wait, that person could hurt another person and another person. So you got to go to the gunshot and you've got to interrupt it. And that's what they did today.
I was actually referring to the training you do with the schools, though, with students and teachers. I've had multiple teachers and students say they've had a lot of training. Is that normal for a school district, or do you guys do more in Oakland County than
We try to do more than anybody. And I reach out to them, the school districts, to houses of worship, to businesses. I've even done 2 or 3 at one of the local TV stations, because we believe that training helps you better prepare for the unimaginable. And the other thing I'd say this is, we don't want people to be paranoid or frozen with fear. We want them to be prepared and situationally aware. So what I tell people is, like when you go into a theater, when you sit down, look to see where exits are other than the one you came in. Not just for an active shooter in a theater, which we've seen around the country, but what if there's a fire? What if there's a tornado? What if there's anything? How do you get out? Where do you go? Situationally aware. And training in businesses or in schools gets people better prepared. What if something happens? Where do I go? What do I do? And how do we react? How do you barricade a door? Is this the best room to go to? If you're a teacher with kindergartners, you probably can't run. If you're a teacher on a ground floor with an outside exit and you've got teenagers, running is probably the best thing, because we teach run, hide, fight. If you can get away from it. If you can't shelter in place, protect yourself. If they breach that area, you've got to fight to defend yourself. We teach that constantly, and we offer that constantly and year round. And to my training unit, I'll say, well done.
Does his accuracy of firing that weapon strike you?
It's hard to say until we know the totality of rounds fired. We review the video. I mean, obviously, you don't have to be terribly accurate if you're right next to someone. So we have to review all that.
Was he this close to some of?
We don't know that yet.
As far as you're aware, the father bought guns before, or was this his first purchase? Were there other guns in the home?
That we don't know yet. That's part of the investigation.
Sheriff, I know you touched on this earlier about what was discovered or taken, not taken from the suspect's house. There's video potentially of what appears to be guns being taken from the home. Are you aware of that at all?
Again, I haven't got the tally sheet of what was seized, other than I know that things were taken, including we have his phone.
Sheriff, you mentioned a bag that a dog had hit on. Was that a bag that was believed the suspect carried in that day?
We believe that was his backpack. So more than likely, the weapon was in there, and probably some residual triggered our dog to key on it.
Is there any safeguards for, students coming, like are their backpacks checked? I mean, you said there's no metal detectors.
No, the vast majority of schools in America don't have metal detectors.
Can we hear from perhaps the representative from McLaren, who are
Sure.
able to talk about any of the patients and their injuries without,
I think the sheriff did a very good job of describing all the injuries that.
You want to come over here?
took place.
Well, Mike's right here.
We had 6 patients that came between the 2 McLaren facilities. McLaren Oakland received 4. 2 were they're stable at this time. 1 was discharged home, and 1 is critical condition. The 2 that we received at Lapeer, it was as the sheriff described, a shoulder injury extremity injury that was discharged safely home, and the 14-year-old has been transferred to Hurley PICU for further management and care in a pediatric intensive care.
Dr. Gardner, can you spell your name for us?
TRESSAGARDNER.
The sheriff has talked a lot about his training. Is this what your team also trains for?
Exactly. We're in a partnership together. The quick notification from the Sheriff's Department initiated the activation of our trauma team. It's a whole cascade for the hospital. We established our incident command. We shut surgeries down, opened up our OR suites, called in our backup surgical teams, activated our ICU, as well as additional nursing staffing. Yes, sir.
Dr. Gardner, based on where we are with COVID, did that and how many hospital beds are being taken up play a role into this at all?
Did not play a role today. We had, as the spirit of our team at McLaren, the nursing team, the tech team, the physician team, everybody was calling in as an incident command. People were available to come in, and we know the condition that we're in currently. They came in, and I cannot celebrate them enough today. They are parents, they are grandparents, they live in the Oxford community. They were there for the victims today.
Anything else anyone would like to share that we haven't already asked? We obviously appreciate your time.
Any leads on a motive?
Yeah, we as I said, the person that's got the most insight of the motive's not talking. So if we find anything in any of the evidence that we've seized, whether it be a phone dump or any evidence that was seized from the home, obviously that leads towards motive, that will be something we're very much looking for, since we're not getting.
So to clarify, you guys have hit the suspect's phone and you're searching it for evidence?
Yeah, we have a search warrant for both the home and evidence related to this, and certainly that's going to be deep dive our computer crimes unit. The luxury that we have is we have some amazing talent in-house, our computer crimes unit, our forensic, our crime lab. So many different folks are trained and stepped up right now.
Can I add just one thing?
Yep.
Sure, if
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
mind? Yeah. Thank you. Dave Coulter, Oakland County Executive. First of all, I just want to, I want to say that the residents of this county and this state can be proud of the job that our first responders, starting with our Sheriff's Department, did today. The work that they did was outstanding. And I can't congratulate them and thank them enough on a really, really difficult day. Today, 3 precious teenagers have been taken from us, and another 7 students and a teacher were wounded. But in a larger sense, there are no unwounded students or staff today. Everybody in the Oxford community, the Oakland County, and frankly the United States has been impacted by this tragedy. Tragedies like this rip away at our security. And a security and a peace that should be rightfully ours in a place like a school. So tonight, I want to first of all say we mourn the senseless loss of life that happened in our county today, the heartbreaking trauma for the 11 families who have been directly affected, and the all too common grief that we've experienced that has befallen our country and right here in Oakland County. I do want to add that the suspect is in Children's Village. For those of you who don't know, that's our juvenile detention facility, so that's separate from the jail. It's actually under Health and Human Services. He's on a suicide watch tonight, so we're checking on him every 15 minutes in a special cell to make sure that there's no self-injury to him. We've operated our emergency operations center all day in support of the lead department, which is the Sheriff's Department, but we've had people from the Health Department, the Michigan State Police, Public Information, ISD, Oakland County Schools. One of the things they've done is help to coordinate what's really going to be a massive effort of offering grief counseling to the students, because there are so many students there and there's only so many grief counselors available, so they've been doing a great job of coordinating those folks as well. So this was a partnership effort on a very tragic and sad day in Oakland County, and our hearts obviously go out to the families, but I want to make sure I also recognize and thank the sheriff and his team for just an absolutely outstanding job today. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing?
Hi, everyone. Representative Alyssa Slotkin. I represent Oxford, Northern Oakland County, along with other areas in the state. And it's just obviously a deeply dark day in Michigan's history. The trend that we've seen all over the country has come to us. We had all hoped that it would not. And it has a special meaning because it's kids. And we all know what it's like to have kids, and we know that it's absolutely a nightmare for those parents who lost children and for all the parents who were fearing for their kids. You heard about 100 911 calls. Those were obviously students and teachers from inside those rooms, terrified, calling our first responders. I think people have asked, what can they do? Reach out to anyone you know in the Oxford area, in the Lake Orion area. Just show that basic human compassion by reaching out. People need to hear from others right now. And we know that whatever the circumstances end up being with this young man, that this just highlights the deep need for mental health services that we have in our schools and across the country. And one of the things that sadly I was doing when I was flying back was hearing from all the other members of Congress who have had school shootings in their districts, including Parkland, talking about what we can do to get more resources, what we can do from a federal level. And we're looking into COVID money and whether some of that money that's stuck at the state can be brought in to help with mental health services. If you want to take anything from today's events, I will just say that the law enforcement and first responders, this is not every county that can do what happened today. As someone who worked at the Pentagon and at the CIA, who served in Iraq, this is not every community that can do this. The preparedness that this community had gone through, this law enforcement community, the calm, and the training that went on within that school absolutely, I believe, saved lives. And I think we shouldn't take that for granted. I want to just note, on a personal note, this morning my team was asking me to sign off on a recognition for Under Sheriff McCabe, who was on site and in command during the actual incident today. He is retiring in short order, and I was signing off on his recognition from Congress. I want to give him a special shout out, because to be so close to retirement after over 40 years of service and to be handling this kind of incident, obviously we benefited from his wisdom and from his experience today, and I want to thank him personally, in addition to Sheriff Bouchard, who has done so much to prepare us for, unfortunately, these tragic events. So thank you, and take heart that our community is coming together to support this community of Oxford over the long term.
Other questions?
When can we expect another update from you guys?
Really, it's hard to say when the next update was. I think, we wanted to get this as much out as we can, but the more information now as we go a little farther forward, we don't want to jeopardize the case or any details that ultimately will be revealed in court or in any potential prosecution. So it's kind of as needed. Certainly feel free to reach out to us, and we're an open book. We get a hold of you guys a lot at odd hours, and happy to do Zooms and all that stuff.
Will you guys be releasing the names of the victims tonight?
Yes, the deceased, not the injured, because those families have been notified.
The press release will come?
We have a handout.
Okay.
And the other thing, again, I want to highlight, the Congresswoman mentioned, the teamwork and partnership that is super, I think, unique. You're going to get the list of that too. We have a list of the agencies, which we're going to hand out to you, of all the different folks that came. I'm trying to look for it right now. But again, that came after Mumbai and the training and the working together. So this whole list, and then a full nother page of agencies. That many agencies came in a relative short order to augment our 100+ deputies that were there, to staff up to well over 300 on-scene personnel to deal with anything that they came across. Finally, again, just let's pray for the victims, the ones that are wounded, that they heal, and the family. and the friends have a way forward with their grief in this not only incredibly tragic time, but also in the midst of a holiday, which tends to punch even harder if it's possible. So thank you for coming.
The boy who died and the officer had put him in a vehicle, did he try to disarm the shooter?
No.
Okay.
He was a victim. He had a GSW and gunshot wound, and the deputy saw that there was such a grievous wound that there was no time to wait, and tried to load him in the car to get them as fast as he could to a hospital, and he expired in the car.
Sheriff, how is that deputy doing?
Well, we're going to be checking in with a lot of our team. I mean, you know, having been on a lot of scenes myself, probably the toughest to see is kids. I mean, there's no such thing as a homicide that doesn't affect you and you don't remember the rest of your life, but a kid hits you in a way that I think it was mentioned. Everyone, you know, resonates with a child, that the promise of that young life, and they begin to associate that with their own children or nephews or nieces. And that's one of the challenges, that when we're operating in one of these moments, that we have to block that out and function. But afterwards, that's going to come flooding in. And they're going to wake up or not go to sleep tonight because of that thought. And we're going to make sure that they get what they need.
Is Tate Meyer number 42 on the football team?
I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.